no one talks about the fact that, in 1882, when 35,000 Chinese migrant workers were brought over to the United States, there was a bill passed to prohibit and just exclude Chinese Americans. But at the same time, in the same year, 260,000 German immigrants came. There was no German Exclusion Act, but there was against Asian Americans, right? There was a jailable peril. Then there was a perpetual foreigner. When you look at Asians, you ask, where are you from? And then the second question is, I'll tell you, I'm from Newton. And then the second question, where are you from? What do you mean? I was born in Boston, like literally born in Boston. This is my home. But there's that perpetual foreigner narrative, which then plays into the model minority myth that we're all successful when it's not true. There are significant portions of our community that are struggling, seriously struggling financially. And like, for instance, Chinatown, just trying to keep Chinatown alive. Like we're fighting so hard just to survive. It's a challenge and why is that, right? Why is it that the city of Boston doesn't view Chinatown as a neighborhood where people are living, but see it as only restaurants exist or businesses, when it's one of the most densely populated areas of Boston? So again, there's so much to unpack, and I definitely want to acknowledge the fact that when there are individual Black people who are frustrated with the Asian American community as a whole, I totally hear it. When people, I hear individual stories about being hurt, about racist experiences within Asian-owned stores. I totally hear it. That's that has to stop. But I assure you that is something that within the community leaders are talking about and actively addressing.
And before, I know my guy Sali has his hand up, and he'll jump right in after this. I just wanted to say, for a point of clarification, thank you for pushing back on my original statement. I misspoke a bit, because when I meant wars and this type of thing, I was more speaking about the main attempts to conquer the world, And so yeah, there were a couple of moments in ancient times where this type of thing happened, but with the exception of Japan, who shout out to my baby's mother, she educated me, because she has many issues with the Japanese being a Filipina. Okay. So I understand what happened in certain cases of imperialism and all that. I didn't want to make it like, oh, there was no wars and infighting and tribalism and all that type of thing. But what I was trying to say, it not like France, England, Spain, Portugal, the major forces that we now know who have really wreaked havoc over the entire globe right now. That's kind of what I meant.
Yeah, and I got to just shout out the Japanese American community too, in many respects, because right now they've literally been going to Congress to, using their reparations that they were given by the U.S. government post-Japanese concentration camps, and using that as a precedent to saying why Black Americans deserve reparations as well. So there is a group of Japanese activists that have been fighting for reparations actually for a long time. Kathy Masayoka and Nikkei Progressives out in LA is a group that's been doing that.
Dope. For a long time. All right, so Sali, chime in, and Sam, send me a link on that if you got that too. I appreciate that. Sali, chime in. Unmute yourself and chime in.
Shout out to Jamal for doing what you do.
Oh, to speak up, we could barely hear you.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Much better, thank you.
Excuse me. So shout out to you, Jamal, for doing what you do and treading where, there's kind of a cliche in Boston where we have these racial conversations is, oh, it's time for us to have these uncomfortable conversations, end quote. We have these uncomfortable conversations, yet the uncomfortable conversations never happen. And I totally attribute that to what another very popular nouveau term these days, and white fragility, which is a sham. There is no such thing as white fragility. It's really something that white folks use to continue their aggression. But be that as it may, Jamal, I appreciate your kind of setting this table with some of the antiquated and genetic connections between us and what many people view as Asians. But there's a political reality that we have to kind of take by the horns here. The most powerful, the most visceral political contrivance on earth is racism, white supremacy, terrorism, sadism, and aggression. That's number one, particularly in when I say our, I'm talking about Black people or African lives. I want my message to the Asians is, I don't want you all to think, and when we have, let me step back. When we talk about these uncomfortable conversations, I'm totally with it and so I'm going to say things that are absolutely going to ruffle your feathers. And it's not for the wow factor. It's not to make you uncomfortable. But this is particularly for Black people, this is a life and death situation. And I don't want the Asians to mistake our focus on ourselves for either apathy or hatred for their existence and what they're going through. Okay? So this is what disgusts me about this entire Asian hate wave that's going on now, and how it's directly pointed at Black people. I've seen too many publications that talk about specifically, this is why we're having this conversation. If you know of a forum where there's a conversation about the relationship between white folks and Asians, please point me to it. But the fact is that in the mainstream media, which many of us view as white media, white controlled media, that's what it is, we're seeing this theme, this narrative over and over where Black people and Asians are being pitted against each other, whether it's real or not. I personally question the validity of this uptick in Asian quote unquote hate crimes. I find the timing curious. But I've also come to always know that in this society and in this system, always question things, always. Nothing happens by accident. There's an excellent book by Gary Allen and Larry Abraham called None Dare Call It Conspiracy, that talks about how nothing politically, particularly in this country, happens by accident. Nothing's organic. I want my message to Asians is, I don't want those of us who have more personal relationships or in the travels of us trying to better the positions for our peoples. I'm what you call a race man. Okay, the difference between a race man and a racist in the most popular colloquial term or meaning of it is that race men and women are focused on their own race. Racists are focused on the activities of others. I have absolutely, and I mean this in the nicest sense possible, I have absolutely no concern for the affairs of Asians. I am totally focused on the edification of Black African people. And I hope you can understand that, but if you can't, so be it.
Now, let me ask you this question. Hold on right quick. Let me just ask you this question, clarifying. So when you were talking about the hate crime thing in terms of doubting the uptick in hate crimes against Asians, right? And also too, once again, because, you know, a bunch of times when you made your comments, you were saying, you know, I want the Asians to know, like, you know, we have to, in my opinion, because, you know, what Sam was talking about, it's not monolithic. So like no different, like if somebody came in right now and was like, so what I need the Blacks to understand is, you know what I mean? I'd be a little taken aback.
I'm with you.
But okay. So, you know, I want to be as specific as possible. But when you're talking about the hate crime thing, do you mean that you doubt what has kind of been portrayed out there? Like there's a bunch of hate crimes going on from Black people, or are you saying that you doubt hate crimes are happening against Asians in general, by, once again, what I started off with, the same rabid dog that bit us, bit them too, meaning that I have no doubt that, well, once again, if Asians right now, Asians, however that, category is made, experiences an uptick in hate crimes, I don't think that means us, because we are generally not the perpetrators of hate crimes. Generally, the perpetrators of hate crimes are the same demographic that, I don't know, shoot up schools. It's just primarily white, men, you know what I mean, who are doing this type of major aggression. Is that what you meant? Or did you mean that you didn't believe the whole hate crime uptick thing in general?
Well, I meant what I said, brother. And I mean that respectfully, family. I definitely appreciate Sam's kind of designation, or at least bringing back to the forefront that, yes, Asians are not monolithic, but I'm only using the language that is part of this conversation. The name of this conversation is, Black community and Asian community. I'm only using your nomenclature.
Absolutely, and we are limited by this thick tongue that we, English that we speak.
Exactly. So I'm only using that nomenclature out of respect for time. But yes, I absolutely respect the designations that Sam was so eloquent in kind of highlighting for us. But here's the thing, Uno. I'm less than, again, I'm focused on ourselves. So it's interesting how when Black people are impugned, we're never, ever given the consideration of segmentation. You dig? It's always, there's a saying about us being looked at as one big N-word. All of us. So it's interesting when and that's something else that I've come to find out about racism, white supremacy, and I'm about to wrap this up, is that our resources, our love, our attention, our ability to stand with somebody in solidarity, our support is always questioned when we don't get none of it from nobody. Not consistently. The difference between something is lucky and something is real is consistency. So we're not talking about just here and there. I'm talking about a consistent, steady level of support for Black people. So that's really all I'm concerned with. I have one more question for anybody that designate themselves as Asian. If you can please point me to, we have Black people have several scholars that for years, eons, have broken down the phenomenon of racism, from Amos Wilson to Dr. Frances Cress Welsing to Neely Fuller and on and on and on. We have a library full of scholars who have broken down racism. Can I get one Asian scholar who has done the same thing? Can anybody refer me to an Asian scholar who has studied and revealed certain aspects of not how racism has affected
I'll give you one name that you will recognize: Bruce Lee.
I'll rephrase. And Bruce Lee, yes, I think part of he was a philosopher, as well as people know him as a martial artist. But from my understanding, he was also, I believe he studied philosophy, if I'm not mistaken. But as part of, and I saw kind of your smile at the end of referencing his name, I'm talking about someone who was focused. Again, I mentioned somebody named Neely Fuller, who was transformational in his work with racism, to the point where we used his work as the baseline for calling it racism, white supremacy.
And again, I will again point you to Bruce Lee, considering all that he did in starting off with Hollywood, starting off with bringing people in, to opening up whole culture-wise, bringing, whether it be Chinese or even acknowledgement of other Asian cultures into the mainstream.
Yes.
You know, even just look at a recent article that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, you know, went into talking about all that Bruce Lee did to break down a lot of barriers. And a lot of time it starts off with movies, TV shows, what breaks into the mainstream.
Right.
And just
Again,
looking at the history of it. So there shouldn't be any dismissiveness just because of what you know Bruce Lee to have done. As any human being is, we all have more than a few facets of what other people see. So it's more than just him being known for his martial arts or known for movies or known for being a philosopher. He did a lot more than people give him credit for, like a lot of people in history. So we can't dismiss, I would very strongly advise, do not dismiss him just because of the little bit that you know, because we don't know what we don't know. So unless we look into it and actually recognize the history and what people have contributed, do not dismiss it right off.
I certainly would not dismiss. Hold on, Sully. Hold on, Sully. Hold on, Sully. Just hold on 1 second. I certainly would not dismiss Bruce Lee, one of my favorites.
Yeah, you definitely don't need a Harvard degree to be an academic or philosopher.
Hold on. But here's what I'm saying, though. And I believe what Salih is saying. So in our tradition, there are certain people, many of whom, let's take somebody who I'm not even fond of, but let's take a Cornel West, or let's take more recently, Dr. Ibram Kendi, who is now here at Boston University, the Institute of Race and these type of things. I think that what my brother is asking is somebody that is more traditionally known in a scholarly tradition, maybe wrote a couple of books on these subjects, you know, who more might be, you know, a historian, maybe archaeology or what have you. And so that if there is, I think Michelle Wu, thank you for coming. City Councilor Michelle Wu is in the house. And she said Mari Matsuda is her favorite. Other people have said Yuri Kochiyama, who of course was.
Don't forget, this is on. Don't forget Robert Takaki as well. Has several books and authored several pieces, academic and commercial, and they're available on Amazon as well.
Put this stuff in the chat, y'all, because at the end I'll be able to download the chat as well, like as text. Go ahead, On.
But I mean, the other thing that we need to think about here is we talked about organizations and, you know, Black organizations, Asian organizations, but if you're, you know, it's not, you know, Black people, Asian people aren't just about organizations, you know, like, you know, we have to think about also, you know, our personal relations as well. You know, we can think about coalitions between Asian nonprofits groups, NGOs, and Black nonprofits groups, NGOs, but, you know, how many Black people hang out with Asian people or know any Asian people besides, you know, people in the service industry? And the same thing with Asian people. How many Asian people hang out with Black people that, you know, that they actually hang out with versus, you know, that serve them in some capacity, you know, whether it's nail salons, gas station, plumbers, or whatever. You know, if you really want to have better relations instead of talking about in monoliths, because yeah, you're right. Although I think his name is Salah. I know when people refer to Black people, it's not just Black people, but, you know, in my circles, we talk about Caribbean people, Africans, even in Africa, South Africans, Zimbabweans, Nigerians, you know, even the Caribbeans, you know, so it depends, the Cape Verdeans, it depends on what circles you're in, you know? So yeah, if you're some circles, they just say Black people, but if you're in my circles, you know, we're distinguished between a whole bunch of different demographics within the Black community, and the same thing with Asians. But if one brother said that, you know, and it's kind of echoing what Jamal said, they don't see Asian people speak out on racial theory or anti racism or whatever. But what Asian forces, what Asian representation do you have in your life that you can say that, you know, if it's, and, you know, I'm just making up something, you know, if it's just someone that's pumping your gas or doing your nails or whatever, you know, that's not, you know, you expect your plumber to be having your back, you know, not me. So, you know, it's all about opening your circle, a lot of times we're in all these silos where, you know, Asian people tend to hang with Asian people, Black people tend to hang with Black people. But if we start kind of trying to bridge that gap and understand each other as people, and not just, oh, there's that Asian dude, oh, there's that, even if it's, oh, there's that Vietnamese dude, or there's that Cape Verdean dude, you know, you gotta kind of go past and look at the person. You know, we have these affiliations, but you gotta go past that, man, you know?
Yeah, sure. For the most part, we already do. And, you know, and again, it's.
I don't think so, bro. I don't think so.
Again,
not for most of us. I've had plenty of Facebook conversations and like, oh yeah, you and my nail technician, y'all are cool, but everybody else, they're not. You know, we're talking to one of my Black Facebook friends that I grew up with at the Boys and Girls Club. You know, like so. I don't think for the most part, Black people, you know, unless you're really kind of out there, you know, Black people hang out with Black people, and then Asian people hang out with Asian people. You know, that's for the majority of people, that's the way it is, and unfortunately, that's the case.
Right, and I'll come up with I'll reiterate another kind of popular tagline in here. We're not all monolithic. So those of us are more focused. Some of us are more focused on the affairs of our people, and there's some things that we've already compartmentalized. The humanity of Asians and the fact that you are not monolithic is something that we've already dealt with and put aside. We're moving on to other things. So that's what I mean by what I say. We already do. We already recognize the fact that you're not monolithic, or there are certain, iterations of Asian.
But hold on. But to be fair, Salih's talking about those of us who already have a certain level of consciousness, those of us who already have a certain level of worldview. I don't think that my cousin Aaron is on here, and he wrote a poem one time, and he said, "To the masses and to the asses." And I don't think that we all have a certain thread of common knowledge. Like what we think is common knowledge depends on who you're talking to. And so Salih, yes, while folks such as ourselves might have, you know, got to that level, I don't think that a bunch of us have. I would like to ask a question too, at least to insert in here. Can anybody tell me the proper way, because Sam kind of brought this up earlier, and Druba has his hand up, and you could jump in whenever too. But Sam brought up earlier the whole thing about when people ask, like, who are you, where are you from, and all that. Is there a proper way to ask, like on all this time? No, I don't know what.
I'm gonna say not. No. Just no. There is no proper way to ask somebody where they're from, where they're really from, where they're really from.
I want people to know. I want people to know that I'm Jamaican, Cape Verdean. I want people to know that I have two different types of Black American Indian in me. Like for me, it's like I want, because I want to talk to people about it. Like those are points of contact.
But it's also something that you only do with a close friend.
It's
you don't walk up to a stranger and say, "Where are you from?"
Oh no, of course not. No, that's D class A.
Anyone that you believe could be possibly of Chinese ancestry and go ni hao ma, okay? Any of that stuff.
Yeah.
Just say hi, like a normal person, or hello, or good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening.
I agree with
Can I make some quick points? Just quickly, I wanted to make a couple of points. Like I heard about Korea being under the rule of Japanese, but it was not under the Japanese people. It was the Japanese imperialists. I think we should make a difference between the Japanese people and the Japanese government, the Japanese imperialist government. And then when we say that Asian Americans are not monolithic, Blacks are not monolithic, that's up to a point. They are monolithic when it comes to our livelihood. Like, then we are monolithic. We all want, a roof on our head. We need food on our table. We need to raise a family. So those are certain values. I think we are monolithic. Asians and Black people, we are monolithic. Like me, I have been doing Black Lives Matter since the killing of Trayvon Martin. Every week I've been doing that. I have done the
Black
Juneteenth.
Lives Matter
I've
has nothing
come
to
out
do with
in solidarity. So I think what we should be talking about is more on where we can meet and where are the common grounds. We know there are differences. Should we be highlighting the differences or should we be highlighting the common grounds, how we can unite, form a united front against racism, just like Malcolm X, he called for a united front. He saw through the games that the white people play in dividing and pitching, various communities against one another. So one dream I have, so, on the May Day, there's going to be a parade from the Boston Commons through Chinatown, ending at Nubian Square. So I have a dream that at Chinatown we meet and, there will be speeches all along. And at Chinatown, we meet, we speak, we hold hand in hand, and we sing the song, "This land is your land, this land is my land." Raise your hand. Very good message that we are all united. So in that regard, I'm trying to reach out to CPA, Chinese Progressive Association. I'm not getting any response. I don't know if anybody here can help me, but this is my 2 cents. I think we should highlight our common grounds rather than the differences. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
I didn't allow you to do nothing, sir. You are welcome here. And let me just say this too, right now, because I know time is of essence and we're going to continue this conversation, but we have amongst us City Councilor Michelle Wu. You're on there. If you wouldn't mind, would you like to chime in and say something, please?
So I guess first I just want to say, Jamal and I have been having this conversation for a long time, like in the span of the entire, 8-9 years that I've known him. And I know he's been having this conversation for way before he even met me as well. So I
started with Sam Yoon.
Yeah, that's right. So, just props to Jamal for getting us to this point where there is a space, right now, years late by everyone else's standards or by your standards. And I think the world in some ways is catching up to you. I guess the only thing I would throw out there is that, and I'm sorry, I came in at 7:30, so I missed the beginning of the conversation, but just, in some of the conversations that Salih and An and others have been saying, it often feels like, I guess the one point that I wish we could push beyond as a world, but especially in Boston, is just the sense of like, we have to choose at the exclusion of how we spend our energy. That energy spent on this community means energy not spent on this community. And of course it makes sense, right, to spend time on your own community and to be, devoted to the upliftment of your own people. If the frame to begin with is already, it's one or the other, right? But does it have to be one or the other? And how do we get to that place where it's like energy put into my community is the same as energy that's going to all of, not every community, but like, just uprooting and dismantling the structures that are oppressing all of us who are oppressed, right? And I know this is like maybe for a conversation much later into the night with wine or whatever, but it's just like we have I think the only way to stop having these like circle of conversations when people are talking about it, because the media has chosen to draw attention to this community in this moment and that one in that moment. The only way to break past that is if we're getting to that point where it's not, we're seeing it as an investment in building for all of us. And I don't know, I'm here to listen as to get everyone's feedback on how we get there, and what part, you know, from my small platform that I can have on the city council and trying to do more, that I can be driving that forward. But I'm really grateful for everyone for this space.
Jamal, can I get a word in?
Yeah, I think so. Yes, of course.
You know, people think of this as something new. We talk about the uptick in crime against the Asian community. There's no uptick. This has always been going on. The difference is just like in the Black community. Now we can document it. Now we can see it. So it becomes a different conversation. But I remember when they had the attacks against Asian people in Detroit around cars. You know, I remember too many incidences of Asians being attacked because of where you're from. But I also know that Black people have been treated this way forever in this country. What I was thinking about what Dong said about your small communities, you know, who you associate with. Well, from my generation, and you know, I'm a child, I could call myself a child of the 60s because I became of age. I became a young adult in the 60s. Half the people that we marched with and fought alongside were people from other races, Asian, white, I mean, different religions. So it's not new that we have a common enemy. We know what that is, racism in America. We have a history. And what I get tired of is people trying to compare our history and saying one is worse than the other. When you're being burned or hung, it doesn't matter which one is worse. They're still massacring people in this country, whether they're Asian, Native American, or Black. And until we decide that we're going to be a united front, that we sit in the background and discuss who we're going to support so we don't divide ourselves, until we stop trying to compare our injuries, we're not going to get any place. This is not new stuff. We just go through these cycles when it becomes upfront again. That's what I wanted to get in.
Sir, you know, I thank you for that, and I love you. And you just reminded me of this story I wanted to tell. So when my mother's on here, my mother used to own a hair salon in Common Square. Right next to that was the sneaker store owned by, I believe he's Korean, and it's the famous sneaker store that New Kids on the Block and all these people went to go buy their sneakers, okay? But back when I was a kid, going to my mother's hair salon, being bussed after the school, blah, 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 there was a young white guy who was terrorizing the neighborhood, okay? And before he threw rocks at the bus with Black kids in it, talking about N-word, go home, and he was terrorizing young Black kids up and down all these little streets off of Washington Park and all that. All the Black people in the community, we were looking for this guy. But before he did that, you know what he had done? He had attacked, I believe it was either a Vietnamese or a Cambodian brother over there on Dorchester Avenue and actually took out his eye. But he's a big hero. His name is Mark Wahlberg. Y'all remember that? So Mark Wahlberg had a history of race crimes back here in Boston of attacking. Once again, he was just an angry young white kid who was lashing out, but his victims were both Black people and Asian people who he saw as the interlopers to his perfect Dorchester.
Remember it well. That's why I won't watch his shows.
I won't eat the burgers. Listen. Not for nothing. A lot of people, because you know, you are certainly, you know, my elder and whatnot, but this is one of the things of being a child of Boston. A lot of people don't have these same types of memories. And this is where, like, the history locally and the history globally and all this type of thing, it really matters for those who've been paying attention. I just turned 50, and in the eyes of a lot, I'm still a young guy, but I remember these things. Let's keep the conversation going. Can anybody now? Absolutely, please.
Okay.
Oh, that's my mother, y'all.
Yeah. And I wasn't going to say anything.
But you couldn't help yourself, could you?
No, no, because this is a world problem, and I think it's horrible what's taking place now for the Asian community. And if people would only do what God says, treat others like you would want to be treated. I don't care whomever. Think about that, because it's horrible. And if me being Black, if I just think about the problems of the Black community because I'm Black, yes, I have a special affinity. I can see why, because I don't have a lot of Asian friends, no. But there is something about, if you just are concerned about your community and what's going on in yours, and you don't care what's going on in somebody else's world, eventually those same people will eventually be coming for your community and yours. I mean, it just, evil spreads. And that's all let us all try to work together, because I think it's just horrible now, what's going on. And I'm too old to be marching. But if I was younger, I would be out there hand in hand with everybody of every race, the human race. Because evil has been done to every race because people are power hungry. And I'm going to shut up, but just treat people the way we would want to be treated. Okay. Jamal.
Thank you, moms. Now, no one say anything, because no one can disagree with my mother except for me.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Jamal, I think that's dangerous too for you.
I disagree, Jamal. No, I'm kidding.
Nobody better say nothing bad about Miss Adrian.
I can't whip them anymore.
No. All right. So anybody else too want to chime in? Please, let's keep this conversation moving.
If I could, first of all, Miss Adrian, thank you for your words. And it's really just, and for me, it's like, when I was asked to come to this meeting, I didn't come with an ask, for any community, to come fight alongside our community, because it is damn time that the Asian community really started, we started having these difficult conversations within our own community to build solidarity amongst ourselves, because there is a lot of tension between our own community. And we have to have those difficult conversations, and we are having those conversations. For me, I really showed up because I wanted to show up for other communities and make sure that we are being consistent, that we are continuing to show without any ask, without just because of the right damn right thing to do. And I for me, that's the kind of mentality that I have coming forward here, and by also just want to recognize that there is people have their own experiences, have their own pain, have their own perspective on things, and they have them for a reason, right or wrong, justified or unjustified, whatever the case may be. But for me, it's like to have these conversations, to air it out, and really just be like, this is how I feel, and we can really have this honest conversations, and really start to humanize one another instead of these caricatures that have been perpetuated onto us and pushed onto us by this system that is only pitting us against one another. And at the end of the day, we lose. I'll be honest, for me, coming to an understanding of myself and Asian American community, my identity, a lot of that came because my heroes were Black, and I learned about civil rights movement, and I learned about activism from Black people. And so for me to sit here and not give credit and when credit is due, and not to also really show up consistently, shame on me. And so it's really in a sense of just doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do, as opposed to, you know, coming here and be like, why can't you come and show up for the Black, you know, Asian community? It's like, no, well, we got this. You know, we've been fighting for our community. It's just the fact that the rest of America just doesn't listen, and we're not heard. And so if you listen and watch our community, I promise you, you'll be surprised about the level of strength and resiliency. Like the 90-year-old grandmother where that guy attacked her in San Francisco and she beat the shit out of him. She whooped his ass, right? And then we, you know, the collectively as a community raised nearly $1 million for her, and she gave it all back, every penny. She gave every penny back to the community because our community is hurting right now, because we're seeing six Asian American women be murdered by white supremacists down in Atlanta. We're seeing a 65-year-old grandmother be attacked in the middle of the street going to church, and then all of a sudden the workers close a door on her. We're seeing, you know, we're tired of the microaggressions and the racism that have been exploited on us in the workforce, and, you know, death by 1,000 paper cuts. You know, like, you know, why is it that Asian Americans are quote unquote silent? Well, it's because every time we speak up, everyone tells us shut up. Every time we stand up, we're told to sit down. And so after a while, you're kind of like, fuck it. I'm tired of this. Like, and that doesn't mean that's right. But I promise you that there are more people such as myself, Michelle, I see, you know, Mary Lou here, like, that are not, and Helen, you know, and Dawn, like, we're tired too. I shouldn't have to worry about my mom going to work, you know, just trying to provide for herself. Like, you know, nobody here should have to worry about the you know, the continuation of violence towards Black people just for simply being Black in this country. You know, and for me, it's like, how do we show up for one another, but not in a transactional way, in a way because we genuinely care and because we want the best for each other. And I'll be, you know, I was hesitant to say this, but like, you know, my niece, my brother-in-law is the executive director of the Dorchester Y. He grew up in Dorchester. He's Jamaican American, and therefore my nieces and nephews are half Jamaican, half Korean. How can I look them in the eyes and tell them I love them as an uncle if I'm not fighting for their community, you know, for who, you know, for the Black community with everything I got? How can I, you know, say that I love myself and my community if I don't fight for the Asian community with everything I got? And so for me, it's just, you know, about right and wrong.
And that's what I'm talking about, Sam. I am.
I want to second Sam's.
Please.
What Sam said there, and I say, if they don't listen, speak louder, and if they still don't listen, yell if you have to, because I would say, at the end of the day, it's like too often people tell you to sit down, don't sit down, stay standing up, keep moving, keep talking, and you know, and that's like one of those things where it's like you kind of just have to, like, regardless of what people tell you to do, as if it's something that's not right and something that's wrong, you just call it out. Call it out if it's wrong. Call it out if someone's not doing what they're supposed to be doing, and just get people moving. It's like some of the things where someone asked earlier about, you know, an Asian scholar influencer type, like Cornel West, right? And naming one. It's like when I was at Babson, I ran into West like multiple times. And some of my other classmates on here might have run into him when he was between Harvard and Wellesley. He seemed nice. But you talk about people that can really speak out, I give a nod to Jamal all day long is when I look to instead. Because that's the type of person I look to on, you know, whether it be Black issues, social justice issues in general, not a Cornel West. It's Jamal, whom I became aware of through Mamleo, and two other great people, one now a PhD, Willie Bradley, and Larry Ellison, you know, with Mamleo. And a lot of times it's like, I think we look to the wrong people sometimes when it comes to a lot of things to avoid the uncomfortable. Don't listen or refuse to act. And it's like, that's why I agree with Sam and I agree with Jamal, and especially events like these, when we need to be able to not just talk about these things, but actually act. And I'd follow Jamal, I'd follow you 9 times out of 10, more than in Cornel West, not so much, but I'd rather follow people who are gonna act, follow through with their speech, and not just talk. What are you gonna do? Do something about it. And if someone tells you no, you turn around and you find another way and you get there until you get a yes. And because it's about stopping the things that are wrong, stopping the things that shouldn't be happening, and making sure that, you know what, enough is enough. We're not taking this shit anymore.
Sound like you went to a black church.
Oh, listen, and this is just giving me life. I'm ready. Look, I might be running for mayor myself. Listen, but I'm gonna run for mayor in Providence though. But it's okay. Hey, but for real, this is a great discussion, and I really appreciate what's happening here because this is exactly what I wanted to have. Now I would like to really open this thing up more, and I would really like to encourage, as I often do with all of the community meetings I have, I want people to speak now who have not spoken before. Anybody out there, I know you're itching and you have something to add. I want people who have not spoken to speak now, and we're gonna just hold on a minute and wait.
Oh, you gonna go?
Yeah, so I just wanted to say thank you, Jamal, for inviting me to this. Actually, Chip shared an email earlier, and I was like, "Oh, I'm on here," and I think I text you, and I actually talked to you and talked to On as well. But one of the things that I just wanted to lift up is that there was a really great resource that was put in the chat, and it was a great resource for an RFP response to continue these cross-racial solidarity conversations. So if anyone is working with any youth groups, or if anyone has any ideas, we just encourage you to apply, because I think these conversations are really important. And I think the way that we're going to obviously create some change and, you know, obviously change the narrative here is we have to really start with young people. So if anybody knows any young people or any organizations that are doing this work and willing to have these courageous conversations, please encourage them to apply. I will definitely drop my information in the chat. And again, just thank you for having me here and putting me in position to listen.
Thank you, sir. Next up, Paul.
Yeah, I will say about Bruce Lee. I was going like he did break some barriers of stopping racism because he had a movie. I forgot the movie name, but it was a movie where the somebody in the movie called him the C word, and he didn't like it that much, but he was calm. He was polite. He didn't want to fight, but he had to fight after because he was getting pushed around. So he just shows like resilience against the bully inside this movie. So I forgot what the movie called, but I'll share it with y'all when I find it.
I'd like to say something, if I may. First off, I want to give props to Jamal for having this. This is a wonderful thing that you're doing, Jamal, in terms of building community. And it's been very educational for me to listen to the various voices of experience and cultural perspective, and also political activism. It's all very exciting for me. I'm here on the West Coast in California, but my folks are in Boston, Jamal being one of them and Adrian being another. And so my heart
I love you so much, sir.
Likewise, brother. But I've had the experience growing up in the Boston, Cambridge area, in experiencing not only African-American culture, but also various Asian American cultures. I was a member of the Asian club in my high school, and that started me on a journey to learn more about the various Asian cultures that make great contributions to the American experience and to American history. So one of the things that I think is really important to avoid turning people into the other is that we have that humanizing aspect of sharing culture. And I want to give my props to the art of rap music, because you have African Americans like Wu-Tang Clan, you know, giving props to Wudang and other Taoist traditions, and how certain words and names are kind of brought into Black culture. And I've seen the same in terms of how rap and other forms of African-American music have been globalized. And so I hope not only is there an interfacing of political voices where people are able to hear as well as speak, but also that people have the opportunity to experience. So I would love to see, like at a YMCA, where you have artists come in from different Asian cultures that are sharing different artistic traditions with those who are non-Asian. So these people that have a different culture are now human beings. So I just think that this is so important. It's been the basis of my work as an artist and as a teacher. And I hope that this is part of the mix because it is so powerful. And I know this in terms of Jamal's work as well, as an artist, as well as a political activist, and would love to make a contribution, whether it's monetary or whatever, since I'm on the other coast, to make sure that these kinds of things happen, because my life is richer because of all the brothers and sisters I have in the Asian community, as well as in the African-American community. So that's what I wanted to share. Thank you.
Thank you, my cousin. And as I put in the chat, I've often told my story of how I began my thing to consciousness. And it was you, sir, who gave me the autobiography of Malcolm X while I was reading, you know, I was devouring all sorts of stuff, Chronicles of Narnia, The Hobbit, all this type of stuff. I was a voracious reader. And it was my cousin who sent me on to the path and gave me Malcolm X. And to this day, and he's also a martial artist, as well as, for those in Boston who may remember, you know, the first productions via the Elma Lewis thing, and, you know, the Black nativity and all this, this is, if people understand my love for like Black arts, Black power movement, all of this thing was a merger. It's because this is what I came up in. This is my cousin here, my mom's, you know, the big hairdresser and entrepreneur who was doing the hair for a lot of these things and creating these grand productions and whatnot. It was all a part of, once again, the merger between Black arts, Black power, the movement, and various other cultures that we had an affinity, a love for, and a relationship with. Aaron, if you remember, one of your best friends to this day is Jason, yes?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right.
Damn near like a second adoptive family.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And these are the types of relationships that I don't think a lot of people understood that was going on in, you know, the 70s and so on and so forth, that, you know, we've had so many merger points of our relationships together, culturally, individually, and so on and so forth, that it really should not be so much foreign territory, no pun intended, as it is.
Mm-hmm. I posted, and I'm not going to take up a bunch more time, but I posted on the chat box an article that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar recently wrote. He's a fantastic writer, as well as the famous athlete that he is, about, let's see, well, that's not it. Anyways, it's in here about Hollywood's mistreatment of Asian Americans and Asians. Yeah, it's right here. It's in the Hollywood Reporter. Hollywood must do more to combat Asian stereotypes. And, you know, it all comes down to programming, and it's, you know, still white controlled, white male predominantly. And, you know, these are the forces that we're fighting. that dehumanize people of color. So it's so important for us to have events like this that Blackstonian's providing, where we can reach out and create these bridges that don't exist because they're not in the history classes, or they're not being shown, or haven't in the past been shown, you know, through media. So that's the power of the arts. So I hope that that's part of the process as well.
Give thanks. Give thanks. Much love to you and my mama, cousin and mama on here at the same time. This is epic.
Yeah.
All right, so now we're gonna turn it up, and anybody else who has not yet spoken, please jump on here.
Yeah, I have to run. I have to teach class, but blessings to everybody. Blessings
yes, sir.
To everybody.
Give thanks.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Anybody else who has not spoken, please chime in. And if nobody who has not spoken does not speak, then we'll just continue the conversation. Please, anybody who has not spoken, particularly sisters, particularly Asian people, please, come on. A conversation is only as good as, you know, how many people is in it. We got a lot of people on here, 34 people, but only like 8 of us have spoken. So like, come on.
Hi, Jamal. Thanks again for putting this forum together, and thanks to everyone who shared their input and thoughts. And I really have learned a lot about the Asian American community and about my own community. And my concern is like, where can we put our energy into supporting each other, into supporting these efforts? Is it showing up with the demonstrations and protesting together? Is it financially investing in each other's communities? Like, where can we begin? Because I know a lot of this information can be very overwhelming at times, especially within the Black community. There's still so much that we're unpacking within ourselves in America. When we have the George Floyd trial going on right now, and there's so much going on in the news, and all this violence that we're witnessing that's now being documented, that's been happening against the Asian American community and the Black community. And there's just so much to process. But I think it is important that we're able to support each other's communities, because it's as everyone's mentioned already, it's not one community against another. We're all combating the same idea, the same illness, the same system of racism and violence and discrimination. So where's the greatest need? Like, where should we be for each other? And I know education is a huge part of it. And I thank everyone for this this discussion, because it is very educational just to learn about each other's experiences and to humanize each other. But where can we support each other the most? Like, where should we be for each other?
Okay, so for me, and we could build on this more at the end, because this is where we're going to get to solution stuff. But for me, at least, one thing is economics. I kind of led into this in the beginning in terms of, the ancient traditions and, the trade routes and all this type of thing. I was a funny young kid, and I hope my mother's still listening. My mother sent me to Don Bosco High School, which was right there, where that is, New England Medical Center type of deal. Okay. And what I used to notice when I used to skip class was I used to go off into Chinatown a lot. And at and back in those days, it was, Chinatown was the combat zone. There were still, the movies that were played, both whatever we call kung fu or karate flicks, as well as porno flicks, as well as good food, as well as a bunch of other things that were going on. But what I noticed early on, just me being a young, precocious kid, when I went there, back in the days of payphones, I don't know how young people are, if you know payphones, I used to go there, and on every payphone, at the top of a payphone was like some sort of pagoda, okay? And when I went into McDonald's, right? The menu was like all in like Mandarin, or I don't know what the language was, but what I'm saying is they had a Chinese menu, And every, like I said, payphone was fashioned in a Chinese certain motif. And they also had a huge bank right next to kind of now where New England Medical is. And as a young kid, funny guy that I was, I went in there and I said, can I open an account? I had my little $100. I couldn't open an account. It was a bank for Chinese people in downtown Boston. And to this day, I was amazed at that. Their own bank. And to this day, too, a lot of people don't know, you know, me with the newspaper stuff. Do you know that the largest Chinese American, I believe, newspaper, what have you, is right here in Boston?
Yeah, but doesn't that make you wonder, though? Why would there need to be a separate bank for Chinese Americans? Why would there need to be separate institutions for Asian Americans or Chinese Americans?
No. I know that.
But no, but like saying, it kind of makes it doesn't make you think too.
No,
why
it does.
Would there have to be separate ones, right? Because they weren't being fairly treated in any other institutions.
And we have a history of black banks. And that's my point. What I'm saying is, I would like to put my little funky $5,000 with your little funky $5,000 and somebody else. See, this is what I mean. If we all really
like Black Wall Street, why did they have, finally trying to get some sort of accumulate some wealth and get some sort of, stability. And look what happened.
Now what I'm saying is I would love, because see, okay, in every major city in America, there's a quote unquote what they call Chinatown. In some cities, there's even a Koreatown or whatever. But in no city in America is there a Africa town or a black town. And one that was tried to be created in Detroit most recently, not the historical things of Black Wall Street, Tulsa, Oklahoma, and all this type of thing. But in the most recent examples, there was a thing like Little Africa was going to be created. And when I first became in city council back in 1997, once again, young whippersnapper, I literally was so fascinated, the young kid from Don Bosco, with Chinatown and all that. You know how the big gateway is? You know, the big gateway? I wanted, just when you come into Roxbury, can we have something that looks like elephant tusks or something? And we have once again, a Little Africa. To this day, I have a proposal for what I would call the diaspora district that would encompass Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan. But I digress. My point overall is that if we're talking about how we can link up, those are the ways that we link up. When I was a kid, there was the Boston Black, the Bank of Commerce, which later became One United, and now it's One United Boston. And there was the Asian Bank. I don't know if it folded or whatnot. I don't know. To this day, I would love if there was a merger of that, where the working class people created a merged credit union or bank amongst ourselves, and also too with also Latino people incorporated. What if we created the United Bank of the POC? I don't know. It's for bigger brains than mine, but that's my point. Those are ways that we could work together. Anybody else chime in, please?
Jamal, you saying that when you went down to a bank in Chinatown, apparently operated by Chinese, and you were denied an account to be able to open an account there?
Yes, but it's also when I was at Don Bosco and I was in the 9th grade and I was probably, 14 years old or something. I mean, I don't know. I would have denied me too. I went in there with $100 and I was like, hey, I want to open a bank account just because I found it fascinating. So that was I don't feel as though I was discriminated against. I understood that it was, it was not for me.
Oh, though of note, anyone who's been to Chinatown recently, and I would say, has anyone noticed how ever since COVID in the past year, businesses boarded up in disrepair, graffiti all over the place, businesses that are barely hanging on, when a lot of them are self-sufficient, supporting communities where they don't have the capacity to operate on Grubhub and all those others that sometimes can take up to, I don't know if people realize, but using Grubhub and Uber Eats and all of them, yeah, you're paying whatever the menu price is, but they can charge the restaurants sometimes taking up to like 50 to 60% of what you're paying them for their food. So restaurants and businesses like that, they can't survive that way. They already work off of on the margins. And it's like seeing how places like Chinatown isn't even Chinatown anymore. All the gentrification, all the building, everything turning into luxury condos, graffiti everywhere. It becomes a situation where it's like, where are we gonna start? If you look at the history of it across the entire country, where you have so many, before it was living in urban areas was not cool. Everyone who had more money moved out to the suburbs. Then when living in urban areas became cool again, then it was pushing out all the ethnic minorities, pushing out those who lived in the urban areas, the poorer neighborhoods, gentrifying everything and pricing everyone out of it. Look what's happening to Roxbury and to Mattapan. I mean, what are our elected officials doing to ensure that, you know, those people that are at disadvantage and are being pushed out and gentrified out of their homes that they lived in for generations, simply because, you know, for lack of a better term, more affluent and often white people tend to come in because they want to be a little bit closer to work, when there are so many people that can't afford to be driving so many miles because they don't have a car. They have to go by bus. They have to go by train. I could go on, but I'm going to stop there.
It's all good. All your points are very well taken. I would just want to continue to encourage anybody who has not spoken, please chime in. We have 34 people online. Please, I really want to hear from people who have not spoken. No, it's okay. That's not a hate against you, Helen. All points are welcome, but I just really I have to emphasize. No, Stephanie, don't put your hand up. Jump in. Get in there, Stephanie.
Hey, y'all. I'm not sure what was discussed already because I logged on kind of late. But I'm just wondering, like, how do we begin to bridge the gap between the Black and the Asian communities where racial tensions are concerned? How can I begin to feel supported by the Asian community as a Black woman while I'm ordering Chinese food through a bulletproof glass, while I'm being talked about in another language while I get my nails done in a nail salon, while I'm watching videos of Black women getting abused in a hair store, which strives and solely depend on the Black dollars to be sustainable, and take into consideration these places are set up in the Black communities and Black neighborhoods. They are aware of the impact of our Black dollars. So how do I feel supported with all these things taking place around me outside of this conversation where it's just like, this is not a general conversation that's taking place everywhere. I can more rely on what I'm seeing versus what I'm hearing in a small discussion.
That's right.
I can speak to that. I would say if you want to bridge the gap in your personal life between Asian and Black people, get some Asian friends. Because I talked to so many people, and like, yeah, my Asian nail technician, oh my floor guy. These are all people that serve you. I don't expect my plumber to ride and die for me. You know what I'm saying? So like, get some friends, get some Asian people in your life. Asian people, get some Black friends in your life. You know, like people who serve you, that, you know, you always treat them with respect. But I mean, there are people that, you know, if the only Asian people in your life is a nail technician and whatever, the Chinese food, the hood Chinese food spot, I mean, yeah, they're not gonna be talking about Black issues at the Chinese hood spot. You know, you gotta look beyond that. That's a point of like frustration with me, because I'm like, all these people talking about how the Chinese food spot isn't talking about racial issues, or the nail technician is not talking about racial issues. Yeah, they're not, and they're not going to. Like,
okay, so let me
some Asian people in your life.
Hold on right quick. Let me jump.
Why do our Black dollars matter more than our lives? I've had
they don't.
Asian friends.
They don't. Black lives matter.
My first
don't matter.
friend was Asian. I remember this from K2. We were bestest friends.
K2.
I got invited. I got invited to her house for a birthday party, and you know, her brother was very different from her they were like maybe 2 years apart, so he's like 2 years older than her. Like, he said something very racist to me, and I was ready to go home after that. It like definitely had an impact on our friendship, because at that age, I'm too young to like really notice or care about like the differences in us. Oh, I'm Black and she's Asian. That's something that's setting us apart.
Right. I think Black dollars, economics and financial literacy, that's one thing. Where you choose to spend your money as a person, a Black person, Asian person, that's on you. If they're not treating you right, take it somewhere else. I was trying to get a oil change the other day, and I saw a Blue Lives Matter flag at the garage. I'm like, oh, this is really convenient, but I gotta go somewhere else.
I'm sorry, that's really convenient to say take my business somewhere else, but you're setting up your business in my community, in my neighborhood.
Yeah. The only reason
hold on.
I'm not. I don't know.
Hold on. Let me just reel it back a little bit, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Because the next up is gonna be Ellen. Ellen, you're next up. Stephanie, I also want you to still be in. I'm gonna ask you to step back just for a hot second. And I just want to also interject that this is what I was talking about in the beginning. Because if we do individual things, then so my sister Stephanie, I have also been through glass at a Black establishment, and I've been mistreated by Black people. You don't get me into my story. I've been mistreated by every race on the planet. Okay, the service I get is despicable. Okay, don't even get me started. All right, so that's just old man complaints for me being funny right now. But literally, it is a thing, and I don't want to dismiss what you're saying. I want you to stay on. I want to hear from Ellen right quick, and let we go on.
Thanks, Jamal. I was actually going to call in Duong a little bit as my Asian sibling here. I just noted, I perceived this interaction in which I felt that you were almost kind of diminishing what Stephanie was trying to say a little bit. And I think Stephanie, what I hear everything you are saying, and I don't want to diminish, because that is your lived experience, and that is so important. And it's a reality that many people other than yourself experience. So I just first feel like we need to name that. And I would also say that, if there is a way for us to get to a place where we can hold both and kind of thinking. So yes, it is true that all of those experiences have happened to you, and it is horrible and, indefensible that you have experienced that at the hands of our community. And also know at the same time, like, there are, the very same people in that community who are, in deep relationship with Black folks who are, fighting actively against anti-Blackness. So, whether it's like trying to form, authentic, real friendships with people who, are not like in the service industry, who I think what you're experiencing is, working class folks in both communities who are really just in many ways trying to survive and really fighting for scraps here. So that's the first thing I kind of wanted to say, because, I think you're being vulnerable here. I don't know if you know other folks on this call, but what you're sharing is, you're not the first person to have expressed it. But I really hope that as part of a way for us to move forward here is to really be able to, get in the mindset of the sort of yes and, or both and thinking. And then for the earlier comment, I want to lift up what Helen said in the comment about, someone asked earlier, like, what should we do? Okay, so for me, as someone who's been doing this work, in different spaces, I think that, you've probably heard this before, like social justice is a marathon, it's not a sprint, right? So there's a tendency for folks in situations like this. We saw it last summer too, like there's a real sense of urgency. Like, what do I need to do immediately? What do I have to do right now? Honestly, like I much prefer folks to do something like months from now, when sort of the national media attention span, it's already waning as we speak, right? So we have to be in this for the long haul. And there's, in my opinion, like many ways for you to sustain this work, to contribute, right? But whether it's interpersonal and your own relationships, calling people in, calling people out when you see stuff that's just not right, like attending one of the bajillion bystander trainings that are being offered now. So that's like at the interpersonal level. And then, call it out in your workplace, like on an institutional level too. This is both happening, these kinds of everyday, microaggressions, there's nothing micro about them, but they're happening every day in your personal lives, and they're also happening systemically. So, but there's like so many ways we can contribute. And I just encourage people, like clearly there's an urgency to what is happening in our communities. And the truth of the matter is what we're seeing has been happening in both of our communities for a really long time. So my advice is for people to be in this work, for the long haul.
Thank you so much, Ellen. And I want to make sure, because there's a lot of hands up. I already told y'all you don't have to put your hands up. All right, so I just want to make sure that we respecting everybody. So first of all, I just want to make sure if Sister Stephanie had anything else she wanted to do that, and then if not, I'm gonna try to go kind of back and forth. Then if Stephanie has something to say, boom, Stephanie, and then Judge Harris, and then somebody else just got out of there, and then Optimus, and then Sam, if that order works with everybody, and then everybody still has a opportunity to jump back in. So Stephanie, if you have anything else to add on, please chime on.
I mean, I just felt like the response I got from Duong was kind of like, it felt ignorant to me in a sense of like, oh, well, they don't have good customer service, don't go there. But it's like, I wish to shop where I live. And I just feel like if you do not have good customer service to all of your potential customers, then maybe you should not be in a customer service business. I'm not necessarily going out of my way to be serviced by a particular group of people, but it's just like where I feel like I can get my needs met. If I'm looking for a certain type of service or certain items and I know where to go, that's where I'm going to shop. It's not a matter of like, oh, the color of one's skin or their race. I would like to go where I'm respected. And I just feel like it's common courtesy. Like if you're going to set up shop in one's community, that like you should respect the people of that community.
Okay, thank you, sis. And not for nothing, I want you to stay tuned in, because your point is and your perspective is valid and welcome. And so as we continue on, I just want you to know that you can jump in and tap in whenever you want to. All right. So now
I appreciate you guys in this platform and this space to have this discussion.
Absolutely, sis. It's what we do. All right. And so now the Honorable.
Oh, thanks, Jamal. Stephanie, I agree with you in so many ways, but I also, I'm old school. I believe in speaking with my money. If I'm not being treated right, you're not getting my money. I mean,
I agree.
I will never go to a Wendy's after the racist ad they posted with those bees. They can't undo that for me. They will never get my dollar. Not that I'm that much of a fast food person, but Wendy's is just doesn't exist anymore. But also, I'll never watch a John Wayne movie. I won't watch Clint Eastwood anymore after that empty chair thing he did with Barack Obama. I try to speak with both my money and my actions. And I have been disrespected. Hell, I've been refused service. I'm old enough that when you went in a store and it was a white-owned store, they wouldn't even serve you. But I also know that they depend on our money. And if we don't give them our money, they can't exist. But I also know that when I go into service stores or service places, I speak to everyone. I force them to talk to me. I've gone to the same cleaners, which is down the street on Warren Street. When his daughter wanted to go to school, he asked me to write a letter for her. You know, and this was an Asian, I don't know if he's Chinese or Vietnamese or what, but he asked me to write a letter for his child because we developed a relationship. He will always get my business when I start wearing shirt and ties again, if that ever happens. But my point is, there's always going to be people who will mistreat you. There won't always be people from other communities. Sometimes our own community does the same thing. But I force them. I speak to them. I try to get to know them. I talk to them about themselves. You know, I'm one of those folks. I've had my mixed feelings about interacting with the Asian community. But I also have a grandchild who's Cambodian and Black. And if I don't treat everyone else as if they were my grandchild, then I'm disrespecting him. I know Cambodian New Year's is coming up on the 14th of this month. I want my grandchild, to celebrate both parts of his life. And because he's mine, I have to celebrate both parts of his life. I want him to speak Khmer, you know, because that's what his mother speaks. I want my community to be welcoming. I live in Roxbury. It's the only place I've lived in since I've been in Boston since 1970. I have watched my community change so much. My own children can't afford to buy in the community that I love. I was talking with Jamal about this the other day. You know, he wants a house, putting it out there. You know a house for sale? Let Jamal know, because he's looking for a house. But we have to take care of each other. But we also have to take care of those folks who care about us. I have performed weddings for a number of my Chinese friends who weren't in churches. And their children call me Uncle Leslie. If I'm Uncle Leslie to them, how can I disrespect anybody else from that community? Either I'm a hypocrite or I really believe in what I'm doing. I want to see all of you at the Dow dinner this year if we have it. You know, all of you, because we have to show our community that we will support each other when we're doing the right thing. So, you know, I'm a lawyer, so I can talk all day. Let me quit.
Hey, Jamal, I have a quick question for you. Will there be any takeaways from this meeting as to how the Black and the Asian communities can work together to fight against a common enemy known as racism?
Yes, sir. So it's actually 8:52 now, and we're getting into the tail end of this. So yes, I was about to wrap up and then go into the solutions section and figure out ways that we could figure this out. So yes, please stay tuned for the next 20 to 30 minutes. This is what we're going to be going into. But at the same time, too, I just was trying to get through to make sure that everybody had already, like everybody that needs a chance to speak can speak. So then we will go into the solution section. So please, anyone else who has not spoken, who has any other points that have not been brought up or anything, because yes, then Can
I chime in real quick?
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Good evening, everybody. I kind of just wanted to speak on when I was in college. I had a good friend. His name was Tran Trung, and we called him T Squared. And me and him, we hung out pretty good. He helped me with my physics homework. I helped him with his English assignments and so on and so forth. We became pretty good friends. I'm Haitian American. Sometimes you'll come by my house, and I'll have some of the, the rice and the legume and stuff like that. And that was a totally different thing to him, but he loved it. And at the same time, I go to his house, and I would have the soup and get to know his family and so on and so forth. And I would ask him questions because I would see things, and I would say, hey, how is it living like with your grandparents and your parents and everybody living in one home? And kind of explain to me how that's how their culture are. The family supports each other, and therefore from that they pretty much grow, and the grandparents will have their house, and the parents will have their homes, and the grandchildren will have to get their homes, and so they kind of built off of that. And through the years, I ended up opening up a business in Carmen Square, right across from the courthouse, and it was a cell phone store, and he would put me in touch with his people back home who had the accessories that can get them for a certain price and so on and so forth. And then I opened up a car accessory shop, and he would have his car club come through and and buy all the accessories and things like that for my business and so on and so forth. And I think one thing that's really important is that we have to start establishing relationships with each other. You know what I mean? And actually having a conversation, asking questions. I think one of the things that's missing is that everyone's pretty much trying to, fend for self, or kind of, fall into this trap of always being separate, and just taking the time and having a conversation with somebody or sharing a coffee or something like that. You can make a lot of changes just by doing that. And I think it's real important that we have to start looking at start building relationships, and I've had negative experiences also, but I can't blanket everyone in one particular race that's how everyone is going to be. I mean, that's all I really wanted to say, is that we just need to start building relationships with each other in order to fight, against the common enemy.
If I could jump in real quick, to Sister Stephanie, I'd like you to look up a brother named Dr. William A. Smith out of the University of Utah. He's coined a phrase called racial battle fatigue. Go ahead and Google that brother, and he's done some excellent work around the stratification of racial aggression and the effect that it has on our people physiologically. So again, Dr. William A. Smith, University of Utah.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. To Councilor Wu, I hope she's still on. I think she's still on. But
yes, I'm still here.
Yes, I'd like to offer you a small level of applause and to bid you well in your vying for the mayorship of this city. Some people may find this weird coming from me, but because I'm so super pro-Black, that I would offer that kind of well wishes to you. But in looking at the field, I really think you are a front runner, if not the front runner. So I just want to wish you well in your future endeavors, and hopefully you're successful. If we're talking about actionables and achievables, hopefully Jamal will be able to connect you and I, because there's something that has gone on. Michael had talked about some of the things that we need to do, those of us who are involved with our youth. I'm involved with our youth since 2015. I run an independently funded group for young Black boys between the ages of 14 and 18. And in fact, many of them are younger and many of them older. Judge Harris has spoken at my group. Jamal Crawford has spoken at my group. And it's centered around knowledge of self. I mention this to you, Councilor Wu, because the city of Boston attacked this group, the fact that I was running this group, through another effort to depose me of my career and my livelihood. You know, when we talking about how racism affects us, most racism, for me at least the expressions of it, if it's mitigatable through the regulation of my emotions, I don't really count it. But if it's about the actuation of the system of racism, white supremacy, aggression, and terrorism, then I think it's a little bit more poignant. So this effort was spearheaded, of course, like most racist white supremacist efforts in this country or in this city, by white men. But 2 Chinese women were involved in this attack as well. Both lawyers, and I'll name them: Kay Hodge and Connie Wong. You can Google them and look them up. I'd like the opportunity at some point, Councilor Wu, to meet with you in more detail and show you exactly how this happened. So if we're really talking about things that can be built from this conversation, you know, having coffee is nice. I'm more into I'm not a marcher. I get to the work after the march. That's my thing. So Councilor Wu, I'm extending an invitation. You don't have to answer now, but between reaching out to Jamal, hopefully we can connect.
Will do, thank you.
I would also say, Councilor Wu, if you do make it to mayor of City of Boston, what would you say to do about someone like Kay Hodge? Stoneman Chandler Miller is the firm that she's with, who's been often pulled out to actually, when it comes to any sort of case that the city has against any person of color, woman, man, or otherwise, that the city goes against. Are you going to fire her or not make sure not to use a firm like that? What would you do?
Absolutely. And I just want to, absolutely, Helen, you're absolutely right. Both Kay Hodge and Connie Wong have a long history of, particularly, and this is what I was only looking for in researching them, anti-Black aggression.
So let me put let me put a nice little button on this, because here we have, look, we're talking about how can Black people and Asian people work together. So we understand that there is a structure, a legal mechanism that when it is enacted through the city, that it does not serve well Asian people or Black people. And we have only a system that supports, I'm going to go beyond the word of racism, and I'm going to go into, you know, white supremacy. Because what ends up happening is that this system upholds a thing that says, doesn't really matter who you are under me. I am this, you are that. And whatever outcome anybody could get, a woman, a person of color, and there's a lot of smoke around that, because, for instance, for my people, we don't want to be necessarily lumped with the people of color thing, right? Because there are distinctive things that are happening to distinctive groups of people. It's very specific. You know, we all get it, but what we get is very different. They serve up something unique for each of us. So Okay, let me be quiet, and let's move forward.
I just wanted to, kind of go back to what happened earlier and just, call in on to, and I know he, in the comments, apologize, but also like, this is exactly kind of how the pitting of us happens in the first place, right? It's like this, when our members of our own community, especially the working class, are put into positions of vulnerability, and why is it that, we have the different waves of Asian Americans who have immigrated to this country and not understanding that history, that like US colonialism and the murdering and the wars that are waged in Asia that are causing Asians to flee their homes and immigrate to this country, and then others who have willingly chosen to come here based off the lie that the American dream was real. They're told, oh, if you come to this country and American, a bootstrap theory, right? Pull yourself up by the bootstraps. As long as you play by the rules, as long as you do this, and then you too can succeed, which is a lie. It's only for those who are willing to prescribe to and assimilate in the way that is acceptable that you're allowed to rise up the ranks, right? But that's how we get. But then like we wonder, we have to ask a question of why is it that Asian Americans or Asians who immigrate to this country have to go into entrepreneurship and have to open up these businesses within Black communities, but the Asian store owners and the entrepreneurs in our community, we have to ask ourselves, like, why is it that we hold anti-Blackness within ourselves, and how, why ask ourselves when we open up a hair store, like, why does it mean so much to Black women in particular, like, and ask the question of why is this such a personal issue, and we have to educate ourselves on that, and I think that what you're seeing with the younger generation that's coming up is that they're no longer willing to allow the elders and ourselves to hold these sentiments and be ignorant and educating ourselves on these issues. We're translating, letters to the different sectors of our community, explaining the true history of this country, not the history that we're taught in school, but the true history of oppression and discrimination. And like letters for Black Lives, for example, they translate into Mandarin, Cantonese, Khmer, Korean, Japanese, and we circulated those letters, and it's so necessary because we have to understand the context of which we're in these situations. But it's so easy to just kind of generalize amidst our pain. And so to Stephanie, I just wanted to name your experiences are absolutely valid, and that's not the first time I've heard that, and it's totally completely unacceptable. And I hear your frustration, and because we are pitted and wedged, right, as racially, but we also do have to understand the context of where Stephanie and other Black people are coming from, and this is where these conversations happen. And shout out, Jamal, again, like, there's so much nuance and depth to this, and at the end of, I feel like we hyper focus on the individual experiences. When we look at it from a micro lens, we forget about the macro, which is the fact that like white supremacy and systemic racism wants us to fight against one another. But I do believe that acknowledgement and repentance for is really important. And so, just continue to educate ourselves on the true history. How Asian Americans, and Dr. Paul Watanabe did a great talk that was part of earlier today. How with the transcontinental railroad that from the west to the east, with that connection point in Utah, 90% of the railroad was built by Chinese migrant workers. But when they took that picture in Utah with the golden stake in the ground, all they showed was a bunch of white people. They didn't show a single Chinese person in that picture. Completely erased Chinese people, migrant workers who literally died building those railroads from the history books. And so what the great Corky Lee did was he went back and took descendants of those migrant workers, and he took a picture at the exact same location with only descendants of the Chinese migrant workers, and said, we will not be erased. And so, just I think there's so many Asian Americans who we don't even know our own history because we're not taught that. It's been erased, and we have to educate ourselves. And And so there's just a lot of work to be done. And but I'm really grateful that we have this conversation, and shout out to Ellen earlier for calling it out too, and Helen and Michelle for being here as well. So and I appreciate Stephanie for being vulnerable and being honest, because as an Asian American community, we do have to truly listen as to why that there is that pain and that anger, and that's justified. And it's not throwing our community under the bus. I need Asians to understand it. We're not throwing ourselves under the bus. I ride for my community, and I'm not going to take any bullshit towards my community. But at the same time, if you love your community, you're going to hold yourself accountable, including myself. So if you catch me slipping, call me out.
Our histories have been erased, both yours and ours. If this country ever told their true history, they would commit suicide. I am surprised about Kay Hodge. I'm glad to hear this, because Kay and I served on boards together and did other things together. I've known her for years, and I am shocked and surprised that she would represent that part of corporate America. I'm very disappointed. I know Connie is with the fire department, so I'm not surprised there. But Kay, I'm hurt. She's been a friend a long time, and it's disappointing to hear such things about people you thought you knew.
And I can speak from my own personal experiences as well on that one, that just from having been a resident of the city of Boston, worked for the city of Boston, and so forth, Kay Hodge is historically for decades, it isn't even just a recent thing, for decades has been pulled out. Whenever there's anything, any form of discrimination or any sort of case that any person of color brings against the city of Boston, they pull out Kay Hodge. And it's always, fighting tooth and nail, even if it's a losing case. I mean, it's one thing I get, in terms of a job, and when it's consistently the same person that they're bringing out every time to, keep down people of color. That's just, there's something wrong there.
Helen, you couldn't be more right. And just to you, Judge Harrison, I know your heart is big as the city of Chicago, from which you hail. But I think it kind of speaks to what we've been talking about here, and so many people are pointing to solutions as getting to know people on a personal level and building friendships. That's nice. But ultimately, when we're talking about one's activity within the power structure, they're the ones who push friendships to the side, not you. I know it's nice. I know it feels good. But ultimately, friendships is not what's going to cut it. We can be more honest. I'd rather have an ally than a friend. An ally, when wars, you have allies because you have a specific goal. But friendships, listen, I could take them or I can leave them. They're nice, but they're not a necessity. I'm looking for allies.
And I guess what I'm saying is that if you had asked me about Kay Hodge, I would have thought of her as an ally. And I'm very disappointed and hurt to hear that she has worked against both of our communities. It's just, it's been years since we served on the WGBH advisory board or something like that. It's just disappointing.
Well, let me say this. This is the thing about what the universal or universality of our experiences. We've all been disappointed by a host of people that we thought were for the cause, whatever cause that was, right? And via their own comeuppance in the world, or what have you, they went softer on it or what have you. But now we are at a point where we have said now, how can we bring it all together? And now that we're in this last thing of it, how can we, the Black community, and obviously, once again, we've already, we're not monolithic. So how can we, the people who are on here right now, how can we work together better? Because no one here speaks for this. And let me also say this. And I don't know if this is even proper. I don't like that when we talk about the Asian community, it's like an automatic default to Chinese. Chinese is not the only Asian culture. Okay. And also too, I want to note that this is the point where, when I asked before about, is it okay to ask like who you are and what you are and blah, blah, blah. This is kind of where it, to me, becomes important, because I want to know, because I want to respect that own individuality and culture that is very specific and has its own history and its own, and oftentimes, because in America, particularly in Boston, when we talk about Asian, we hone down on one thing, and it is not that. So I would like to create relationships individually, but also organizational relationships, where when we're moving forward to do something on a vote, or whatever it pertains to housing or issues where we have a commonality, that we can move together as a block once we determine our commonalities, if that makes sense.
Jamal, that makes sense. I get where you're coming from, but I think part of the reason it's such a loaded question, if that makes sense. Like it's one of those questions that, for those that can have had shared experiences, where the where are you from questions, or the where are you really from, or what is your, it's one of those things where it really has to be if the person is comfortable with sharing, because then it's such a loaded question in the sense where, just from even my own personal experiences, and I'll speak just only for myself, it highlights that, perpetual foreigner kind of feeling, no matter having to explain, having been born here, born and raised in this country, and I'm as American as anyone else that's here, and it's one of those things where it's just a kind of, I think it's one of those things where you have to let that person share with you when they feel like sharing, and let that come naturally, versus having it be one of say the first or maybe even the fifth question you ask the person, because it brings up a lot of that ingrained and entrenched feeling of being a perpetual foreigner, and it just has a lot to it, if just so you can kind of understand where that's coming from. It's it's similar to, I guess the only analogy I could think of would be, say if someone came up to you, or anyone else who they saw, and they're like, oh, where are you from? Are you from Africa, or are you from the Caribbean, or something like that? I guess it's the only analogy I can think of. But it's just one of those questions that I myself, and I don't know if anyone else wants to speak up on this one, but just being constantly asked, where are you from? And I'll be like, I was born in Boston. And where are you really from? I'm like, I was born in Boston. It's like, and having to keep, repeating myself. And it's like, what? And you ask me this, but you wouldn't ask anyone else who doesn't look like me this, you know what I mean? It's just, there's a lot entrenched there. So just, I would say, I can understand where you're coming from, wanting to be aware and cognizant of other people's cultural and ethnic backgrounds and so forth, but just be aware that it's just one of those questions that's very loaded, and it just brings up a lot of that entrenched racism.
And absolutely, wow. It happened to me my whole life. People who thought I was Latino. I mean, people were coming up to me, speaking Spanish. When I first moved to Atlanta, I got called Hector and all sorts of stuff. Nobody knows what I am. I'm you know, racially ambiguous, if you will. All right. And once again, when I started off, if you were on at that point, I don't know. But, you know, in my family, I have Cape Verdean, I have Jamaican, and we have a whole thing, another thing like raise your flag. Like, I'm proud of all of it. And like it, so to me, the asking of where you're from or whatever, I was actually only offended when people thought that I was biracial, meaning like mixed, like black and white, or you know, I don't know. I felt a certain type of way, and so we have that same thing too. I don't want you to think that, you know, we don't have that same thing too. Where you from? I'm a light-skinned black man. I'm from handsome Gonia.
Well, I thank you for sharing that, Helen, because I often, when I have somebody over here that might be, like you said, doing some work, when they say, you know, like, oh, well, where are you from? I'm talking to them, but that comes up because I'm ignorant to, I don't, you know, now people come from all over and I don't know the difference. And so I find I engage in conversation and befriend them, they're Vietnam, or it's like we have good conversation afterwards talking about their family, but I was not aware that I could be offensive to them by asking, where are you from? Thank you for that.
And Jamal, I agree with you that we need to think about what unites us rather than what divides us, because we will be playing into the hands of the white supremacist if we are thinking and talking about what divides us most of the time. And I think if we work together on certain actions, that makes understanding much better. Like I run one program which is bystander intervention. So if I see that a black person is being harassed, don't be just a bystander, be an upstander. Do something, say something. It applies to every other Asian Americans as well. Be of Chinese descent, Vietnamese descent, doesn't matter. Bystander intervention, if I see someone is being told you don't belong to this country. The other day, I saw a woman of Chinese descent was told this, I intervened. And I think this on the field, on the ground, working together, it takes away anything misunderstanding due to propaganda by white supremacists. It will take away and it will build up a bondage. So I agree with you on that. Let us focus on what unites us so that we can work together to fight against our common enemy, white supremacy. And then what divides us, we can keep it to ourselves and discuss how we sort them out. So with that, Jamal, thank you very much for this forum, and look forward to working with you. And Councillor Wu, if you are still here, I hope you would be agreeable to speak at a May Day rally that some of us are having, starting from Bandstand, way over through Chinatown, ending at Nubian Square. And I can follow up with you through Jamal. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
I think I just wanted to, with the where are you from question, and I think where it becomes really hypersensitive, particularly for folks or Asian American, is it's different when you're asking the way you do, Ms. Adrienne, when you're asking genuinely curious about trying to connect with someone, versus the reason why I think people get hypersensitive is because it's often used to tee up as a way to otherize you and then weaponize it, right? So it's like, where are you from? Oh, I'm from China. Then it becomes, oh, now I can attack you, right? Because now you're not American, and now therefore you are deserving of the vitriol, the hatred I'm about to spew at you, right? And that's why when Asian, we're like Donald Trump was saying China virus, we were also fearful, and we're like, this is going to have repercussion because this notion of weaponizing our otherness, the perpetual foreigner, has always been something. And so, like, for example, like our parents who, my mom immigrated here, and from Korea, over 30 years ago, and her English, obviously, to this, she's fluent now, but she still has an accent. And the way that people weaponize that against her and pretending like just in the same way of within the nail salon that Stephanie was talking about earlier about Vietnamese the workers like speaking in Vietnamese and her not being able to understand. It's the same thing. It's like people, oh, you don't understand? Why, you're so stupid. My mom's damn smart. Back in Korea, my mom was, a computer engineer. She's brilliant. She's way smarter than me. I'm the dumb one, but yet people hear me with my, perfect English and assume that I'm smarter than her. Or the fact that we can't bring our own food. Like, I would beg my mom, please don't pack me Korean lunches, because people would rail on me for bringing kimchi to school. And now they want me to take them out to Korean restaurants, right? But it's like everything that embodied who we are, our language. Oh, why are you speaking that? Ching chong chang. I can name you by throwing pans down the hallway. That's your name. Like those things, when our identity and what makes us, who we are is weaponized against us. That's when that question of where are you from? That's when it becomes painful. But when you ask in the way you do, it's different, right? And people can generally contextualize it too. You're asking where are you from, just so you can connect. And then we can open up that discussion because it's coming from a way different place. Oh, well, I'm from here, but my parents immigrated. And then we can talk about that. But it's when people come, where are you from? Then that's when we're like, hell no, I'm not telling you shit. I hope that kind of contextualized everything.
And don't be swearing at my mother. That's a good Christian woman. All right, just watch your language.
You're right. And I apologize for that. I can feel my mother smacking me for doing that. So I apologize.
You're fine.
Yeah, I want to echo what Sam said. It doesn't even have to be like they want to say ching chong ching or whatever, but it could be they're just trying to label you and have power over you by labeling you, and just sectioning you off in that way. But if you're really coming at it from a place of, oh, I really want to get to know you. It's different. It's kind of a nuanced thing. Sometimes, I'm guilty of it. I speak almost 5 different languages. So sometimes I just don't want to speak English. So, like, oh, you speak Portuguese? And I lived in Brazil for a little bit. So, if it's comes from a place where you're really trying to get to know them and not just, when somebody said, yes, to say ni hao mao or que paso or whatever, or sak pase, that's like the superficial level. If you're really trying to get to know someone as a human being, that's different. And it's kind of a nuance it's kind of hard to distinguish, but if you try hard enough, you can, I think.
Yo, this conversation has been so powerful, and we're trying to get to the solutions. And I just want to, once again, anybody who has not spoken, I want to encourage you, because, now we're winding down. We're about to get out of here. So anybody who has not spoken yet, I know inside of you there's something burning. Speak now. Folks who have not spoken, please, somebody chime in. When's the next meeting? I don't know. We'll have to determine that. Based on this, I should have the emails of all folks, and if we are going to continue the Black and Asian dialogues. Oh, let me just say this while we're waiting for the next person to find their voice and feel empowered. I will tell you, I intend to, do these racial dialogues and continue. I intend to do one on Black and Latino relationships. I intend to do one on Black and Jewish relationships. I intend to do one on Black and Irish relationships. So, stay tuned. And everybody too, obviously, I want everybody to be in tune with all of this. So please, anyone now, we still have 22 people online. Is there anyone who has not spoken? For instance, I know my friend Professor Cheryl is on, and she has a whole group of students that are on.
I actually just unmuted myself.
There you go. Boom, boom, boom.
Get out of my head. I do have 3 students that are still here. I'm not going to say their names because I promised them I would not call them out. So I want to first say thank you. I'm glad that you're opening this up because I think it's really critical. So for myself, there's so many different views I have right now, so many things going through my head. Being Jewish, I'm always just thinking about, there's just so much. And of course today, it is Yom HaShoah, and thinking about the liberation. And I think about what it took for me to be here. My family, who changed their name so nobody would know that they were Jewish. My family, we had to find our place and to hold a candle in our place when we couldn't find our own place. And I identify so much with what so many people are saying. Things that Stephanie said really resonated with me. So I'll focus on that because it takes it off of me. When I lived in Los Angeles, my ex, and I would take his mother, who was African-American, and I would take her to the nail salon. And she was this tiny little thing, and she was just so sweet. And she's always said, Cheryl, you just have to kill him with kindness. And I felt, wow, it took her voice to give me a voice at the nail salon. And when she said said, can you please speak English because you're making me uncomfortable and she said, I want to be able to speak with you. And so it was kind of, she found her place, and she was, I believe, Filipino and African-American and who knows what. And I just remember her saying to find our voices within each other so that we can communicate with each other so we can be better and be better than the people that were before us, that kind of put us into these corners, into silos, and to stereotype us. And I think that that's really where I'm coming from, is trying to break down these stereotypes and to hold each other and everybody else accountable for that. And literally not being a bystander and not being afraid to use our voice. And I think that we've become accustomed to worrying about what other people think when we speak up. And we can't be worried about that. So I appreciate these conversations. And, people say, hard conversations have to be had. I don't find them hard. I find them necessary. And so we're going to end it right there. And I really, really appreciate it. And I just, I can't wait for more of this and for more interaction. And thank you to my students for hanging in there as late as you have. They don't have to be here.
Okay. If you had any, other questions from the students, that would be good. And I also see other people just got on as well. So if anybody else has some, comments, then let's go.
Hi, Julia.
Sorry, I'm late to the party. But
yeah, I told my students you were going to be here.
Sorry, Cheryl, but the good thing is that this is being recorded and I can watch it.
That's right.
And you know that you can always bring me into any of your classrooms. So I'm here for all of it. You know that we go way back.
You're booked. So are you, Jamal, by the way. You're not out of it.
But no, thank you for holding the space, Jamal. I really do appreciate the invite. I accepted it as a yes. Let me see if I can get up in here, and I'm glad that I came through real quick. But I'm happy that we're having this discussion, and I think that I'll watch the recording and see what I missed. But I do know that not only is it a timely conversation, but I think it's one that's been long overdue in our city. And so happy to be here. And thank you for acknowledging that I was even here. I thought I was gonna be here on the down low, but thank you.
Absolutely, thank you. And so Cheryl, if you have any of the student questions, let's do that. And anybody else has any closing remarks, and we will try to keep this going based off of the emails that will be in this. And, you know, certainly we've established some links and relationships here. Cheryl, are there any specific questions from the students?
If you guys that are on, if you want to message me privately real quick or send me a text message, I did share with you my phone number if you don't want to be open, but please do open up and share. But we are doing, there is an assignment after this, Jamal, that they are answering questions I can bring to the table to you later. But the 1, 2, 3 of you that are still here, I encourage you, it's a very small group and you're in a safe place. So I'd love to hear from you. So
Jamal, 2 quick questions. Is the chat being saved and which can be shared with us?
Yes, sir. It will be saved. And yes, the chat will be saved and I will have the text record. Yes.
And is the Zoom being recorded?
Yes, the Zoom is being recorded.
Wonderful.
I started 20 minutes in. Yes.
Thank you.
Absolutely. All right. Anybody else have anything else to wrap up? And did Cheryl?
I thought I missed it. I literally clicked in. I did not anticipate that this was still be going on. I really did think I missed it. So I'm incredibly inspired to see that it's still going on. That meant that it was a robust conversation. So thank you, Cheryl and Jamal, for holding this space. And I see that Councilor Wu is also in the house. So
absolutely. We've been cooking with gas. All right. So is there anybody else that has anything else to add, please? And Cheryl, did any of the students come through with anything?
I'm actually messaging a few of them right now. So let me just see. They tend to, it's a hard for, oh, there we go. Hey, Sharon.
Hi. I don't have much to say, but I just want to say it's thank you, because you gave me so much information. And by using this platform, it gave me much more clarity of the Asian community, because I really didn't understand. I don't know too many Asian people, first off. It just gives me an understanding of how things are operated and how, you know, how they are ran, how they grouped together. But I just want to say thank you, because now I have much more, you know, open eyes, awareness. Thank you.
Thank you, sis.
I just want to add really quickly. I know Cheryl had touched upon stereotypes in her comment. I just want to thank everyone for their comment and their input and their experiences. And again, just piggybacking off of a lot of things that were said today, still processing it all, but just wanted to note that although all of our personal experiences are incredibly valid, and I applaud anyone who's able to feel comfortable sharing them, I think we should also be very cognizant and aware of not using our personal experiences to define all of a people based off of what we've felt or how we've been treated by a certain demographic. I would hate to have someone have a horrible experience with a Black woman and then from that experience completely define all Black women from that experience and so group me into that as something. You know, I knew someone who their family was robbed by a Black man, and from then on they assume all Black men are thieves, all Black men are out to get you. So that's where all these stereotypes and these horrible labels are created. It's from this ignorance, and sometimes it stems from personal experience with a certain demographic, and then from that experience, it defines a whole group. So although our experiences are valid, I think it's just we should be really careful not to use that as a definition for everyone.
That's the biggest thing, is stereotyping. Like forever and a day, I'm always thinking like that's always happening. Try to dispel and dismantle the stereotypes is probably the biggest obstacle I have found over time. It's damaging. It's damaging.
I agree.
And this is, kind of what I began on, because if we focus on individual things, and, I made the joke of, just my little life, but, I've been done wrong by everybody. I wouldn't be able to give a good report on anybody. I have been treated wrong, dismissed, disrespected, humanity not recognized, bad business done by everybody. So at some point, what ends up happening is you have to well, you don't have to, but you should recognize that these are just conditions of humanity. So, newsflash for everybody on here. There's just scumbags out there. There are just scumbags of every race, creed, color, people who do not operate off of a good level of, fair business, square biz, and all that. So you could say, I had an Italian plumber, and I had a Jamaican landscaper, and I had a Cape Verdean roofer, and a Japanese tile guy. Listen, at the end of the day, we will all be able to come up with a bad report on everyone, but none of those bad reports equal what I would say is like the entire grouping of people. That's what we have to be careful of. And let me just give this nice example. Some of the people who have committed the biggest atrocities in modern humanity, not over all the time, but modern humanity. Cheryl, you'll understand. We had the Nazis. My mother was born in the 40s. This thing was going on during people's lifetimes. And there is not necessarily a stigma on German people today. German people have been able to go on in life and matriculate on into things. But meanwhile, as funny as it is, we have more stigmas, to me, amongst each other than we do of groups who have been routinely villain. I couldn't tell you a German joke. I could tell you a Jewish joke, though. I could tell you a Chinese joke, a Japanese joke. I don't know a German joke. So this is my point of some part of white supremacy equals white privilege, where even when we are talking about the worst parts of humanity, where we say, hey, we don't want to be like that, somehow the white European type of thing still gets off scot-free. And we are left fighting amongst ourselves. We all have jokes amongst ourselves. Can anybody tell me a good English joke?
Nope.
Nope. Yeah. So that's the point. All right, everybody. Anybody have any like last points to go?
No, Jamal, just one of my students just wrote that he really appreciates it, that it gives him some knowledge and added more to himself. That's what Moaz wrote. So, you know, it's definitely it's impactful from you know, that's one of my youngest students. So this is one of those kind of conversations that transcends. All come to the table at all ages and from everywhere, and it's great. And it gives us a lot to think about, and there's so much work to do for each other.
And as I said, this is the first of many. So when we have the whole Black and Jewish conversation, you're going to be one of the people front and center, along with you'll get to meet a bunch of other people that I know as well. We're going to do Black and Latino. We're going to do Black and Irish. Like, we need to have these conversations. Let's do it.
Sure bet.
All right. So not for nothing, we're going to end now. And I'll end with the same thing that I end with, you know, my normal thing, which is, you know, thank goodness for everybody that, you know, came here tonight. And, you know, well, now it's late. So I would normally say, you know, go be great, go do something great, be great today, but now be great, you know, tonight, what's left of it, and go do something great and be great tomorrow. Right. But push past the pain to the power. And as always, please choose righteousness over ratchetness. And as always, please don't fall for the banana in the tailpipe. All right. So everybody, thank you all for participating. I feel like we've made some networks and some friendships here, and you know, let's continue this conversation. We can do this part 2. And we can continue, as I said, what we're going to do with the others. All right. Thank you all for spending your time tonight. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you were here with us. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Be good. Thank you. Be safe.
Good night.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Peace, Ali, Jamal. You guys still around?
Peace. 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 Peace.
Peace. Okay. Now, how do I do leave meeting?
Here go my mama. She can't figure it out. Listen, I'm gonna hit end.